And John is with us from Washington. John, Jeff Flake told you he's still not ready to endorse Trump. And this week, we had more top Republicans say they'd vote for Clinton. These holdouts and these high-profile defections are interesting headlines, but how much do you think they really matter?
Well, I don't know that they matter. They're not going to change anybody's mind, probably, but they are responding to forces that are changing minds, or at least that are keeping people away from moving to Donald Trump in the polls. What we see is a group of Republicans, as Ron Brownstein talked about on the show today, particularly those college-educated white voters in battleground states who've traditionally been part of the Republican coalition, who are nervous about Donald Trump and are particularly nervous about his temperament and his ability to handle or his fitness for the job. Those are voters who are moving towards Hillary Clinton or not moving to Donald Trump. And so these defections in the Republican Party, which, as you point out, are still relatively minor, they're not going to change anybody's mind, but they show what's going on inside the Republican Party.
John, Trump's endorsement of Paul Ryan on Friday seemed to signal a bit of a different style of campaigning. We saw him reading from notes there, something he doesn't often do. What did you see from Donald Trump there?
Well, we've seen it before. He promised that there was going to be that he was going to be more presidential. He's promised that going back all the way to the beginning of the year. His campaign manager, Paul Manafort, said that he was going to start changing. That was several months ago. But a lot of Republicans have not seen that change. They saw some of it in his selection of Mike Pence. People kept saying how Pence was going to stabilize the ticket. But what they also noted was that the picking of Mike Pence showed that Donald Trump could pay some heed to the kind of technicalities of politics, that you have to do certain things in order to win that he might not otherwise do, or that are not exactly sort of run and gun, which is what his campaign normally and usually is like. But then he slips sort of back into pure Donald Trump mode. So there's been a little bit of discipline, but the challenge is, can you add enough discipline to undo or balance out the challenges he's given himself on this temperament question? So that's the first challenge. Is it possible to do at all? And is it possible to do in the number of days left before people start voting? Or has he reached a point of no return? And so those are the two things we'll look for going forward. Discipline on message for a day is fine enough, I guess, but the real challenge, as Republicans describe it to me, is whether Donald Trump can show that kind of discipline publicly and then in terms of what the campaign does from now until the voting stops.
So, John, based on what you just said, was the Speaker Ryan endorsement the first step by Trump towards acknowledging that he needs to change his tone?
He's acknowledged it a little bit here and there. It is a significant step. It required a lot of hard work and elbow grease from Reince Priebus, the chairman of the Republican Party, who is from Wisconsin and who helped bring together Ryan and Trump in the first place. So if that required all of that work, the question is, when is the campaign and the party going to be moving in the kind of in-sync cooperation that needs to happen to run a successful campaign? I mean, it's not like there's, a half a year to go here yet. The election is coming. There are a lot of battleground states. Hillary Clinton is a flawed candidate, but she has a lot of money, and the Democrats tend to have an electoral advantage. So they need not just to be able to kind of do one thing right, but about 50 and simultaneously.
All right. Finally, John, I want to ask you about something Hillary Clinton said on Friday. She was trying to clarify some remarks she'd made where she said the FBI had called her comments about her private email server truthful. Let's take a listen.
I was pointing out in both of those instances that Director Comey had said that my answers in my FBI interview were truthful. That's really the bottom line here. And I have said during the interview and in many other occasions over the past months that what I told the FBI, which he said was truthful, is consistent with what I have said publicly. So I may have short-circuited it, and for that I will try to clarify.
John, we can already imagine the lines being used against her in attack ads. What do you make of that?
Well, where to begin? So short-circuited, really, I think she means she shorthanded it, but I think what is still the case is that not telling untruths to the FBI is a pretty low bar. That would be criminal activity. The things that she said to the FBI that were true, it's undoubtedly the case that she also said those outside of the FBI interview room. The problem is the things that she said outside of the FBI interview room that turned out not to be so, and that she may not have repeated in the FBI room, but that nevertheless are still there, about why she set up the server, about the nature of classified communication. Her campaign said that the server itself was within the letter and the spirit of the law, which it wasn't. They said that other previous secretaries of state had done that. They had not created their own server system. And on and on. There have been several statements that Director Comey contradicted in his public remarks. So I guess the final point I would make is that in answering these questions, much as the same as with some of the answers that Donald Trump gives, people know what a proper answer would sound like. And so the carefully calculated and hedged answers that glance at the truth but miss it in some ways reinforce the underlying suspicion that voters talk to me about again and again. If this were just a question of a brand new issue that everybody was still getting familiar with, that's one thing. This is the greatest liability Hillary Clinton has. She has an uphill battle to convince voters to trust her. And so the answers have to be they have to be even better than a normal answer that a politician would give. And that's why this is a problem for her.
All right. John Dickerson in Washington for us. John, thank you so much.
Thanks, Elaine.